everyone all around the world who's dialing in on their Zoom, because Zoom's used for everything now, including making bread, making cars, and doing Zoom calls. But I digress. Today with me, Christoph Trappe. Now, Christoph and I met in a big country called India at a conference where we both were presenting. So I haven't seen him for a long time, and he hasn't aged at all. He's still got the same amount of hair that he had the last time I met him. And the glasses look very cool, by the way, Christoph. But Christoph has run integrated campaigns and works for a growth agency across many industries, including healthcare, SaaS, information tech, nonprofits, and publishing. He's led teams of journalists, content creators, strategists, and designers' career to drive results successfully. You've got to be joking. Christoph has worked in various verticals with a mix of businesses, including startups and established companies, and experience spans the full spectrum of digital strategy and implementation, including social media, SEO, UX collaborations, content strategies to drive results. He's a global top 14 content marketer, a top 40 B2B marketer, and all the rest of that. His blog has been listed as a valuable resource in the marketing industry. He's a top 2.5% global podcaster. He's also the author of 3 marketing strategy books, which include Content Performance Culture, Is Marketing a Good Career, and Going Live. And we're going live. So here we are. Thanks, Christoph. It's great to see you again. Not in real life, which is always much more fun, but welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Thanks for making the time. The time difference is so crazy. It's 5 o'clock here, PM, and you're a day ahead of me, right? 8 a.m. roughly.
Yeah, as we say in Australia, and we tell all Americans that come on the show, we live in the future. So if you need any help, we can leap in and help you out, right? So we can do all sorts of stuff. We even tell you who won the horse race here, and you might be able to bet on it and win. So, but Christoph, tell us a bit how you got into content marketing. It's maybe a similar story to me. Maybe you started a blog, maybe you got into social media, maybe you got drunk at a bar. I don't know, but how did it all start for you?
Well, I haven't pulled out my hairs about that topic for a long time, as you can see, because I'm bald. Thanks for that shout out earlier. But, I grew up as a journalist, honestly, did public safety reporting, investigative reporting. And at some point, journalism, journalists move into marketing, right? I mean, that kind of seems to happen even back in the day. And of course, journalism has changed quite a bit today, so many layoffs and so many changes and all those different things. I was a little bit ahead of that, not to age myself too much, but I was introduced to 𝓀𝓵 and his whole content marketing world spiel there. And, I really just moved my journalism skills over into content marketing. And really what I do today, it's basically journalism, except for companies, right? Because you're trying to tell good stories. You're trying to tell relevant stories. In journalism, we don't talk about the top of the funnel or the middle of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel content. We just tell stories. So that's a little bit different. But at the end of the day, that's kind of where I came from. And, I would say Joe has had a fantastic influence on me. Of course, your name has popped up many times over the years, number one this, number one that. And then, of course, we run into each other in India. So certainly that's kind of how I've done it and still do it today with companies around the globe for 𝓬𝓪𝓻𝓷, growth marketing agency.
So what year can you put a year on when you sort of transitioned from journalist to content marketer? Can you put a year on that?
Yeah, I think officially we probably have to say about 2010. But I really moved out of journalism like around 2007, 2008, right on that time frame. And then I created training videos for banks and credit unions, which that's not really content marketing, but that's I learned how to do video, really. That's what that job came down to. It was about 3 years doing that. And I think 2010 was probably the earnest.
So is that when you started the blog as well?
Well, I've started a number of blogs. The current one I have, ChristophTrappe.com, I think officially that started like 2013, maybe 2012. But in 2009, I actually launched Eastern Iowa News. And I was like, well, I want to see what all this publishing is about. Maybe I should do like a local news site. Imagine that. And I launched that. It really took off pretty quickly. And I kind of wonder what would have happened if I would have stuck with that and just kept going and not not getting rid of it and whatnot. The Texas Tribune, which has been very successful, they started right around that same time. Right. They're like a nonprofit model, which I wasn't even thinking about. I didn't know anything about. But so the current blog, 2012, roughly. So, 11 years it's been up and running.
Yeah. The reason I asked you about that is because content marketing was a word that emerged a little bit, well, about the time I launched my blog, or a little bit before. 2009 is when I launched my blog, which I came up with a really creative name, 𝓲𝓵𝓵.com, because I couldn't think of anything else at the time.
Same here.
But it was interesting is that I sort of fell in love with HubSpot's blog back then, and they were using the term more inbound marketing than content marketing. And I think sort of Jay Polizzi and a bunch of others, maybe myself included, started using content marketing. So we were maybe content marketers before the term really got traction, but today content marketing is huge. Content marketing originally sort of came out of doing blogs. That's really, like, a lot of people think content marketing is all about Instagram and Instagram Reels and stuff, and going, well, it is now. But we were the old school guys that also leapt in and started blogging when blogging was cool, and now blogging is just old, but still works bloody well, frankly. So tell us a little bit about your journey in content marketing. So what did you do in the last 10, 12 years? What have you been doing in terms of, and what have you seen change in content marketing? And then I'd like to hear your thoughts on the role of AI for a journalist and writer as well, and how you can use it without getting to do everything. We'll talk about that later. So tell a little bit about your journey in content marketing and how you see that, how that's unfolded for you.
Yeah, some 3 great questions. Especially AI is very interesting to me right now, and the changes. I always strive on, what is changing? How can I maximize the new thing right immediately today, and then move forward from there. But my journey, I went into marketing, worked for a nonprofit, and then I moved into, let's call it, consulting for the first time with 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓽, and helped them stand up a content marketing program. And back in the day, in those days, Jeff, we interviewed people with cameras. We went to their offices and put the camera in front of them, and then we took the footage back. And it was, it was long ago, but not that long ago. You could already plug it into the computer and just download the footage. So there was no tape or anything like that. But today I couldn't imagine taking a camera with me to record anybody, right? I would just do it on my phone, or whatever. So that's kind of what we did. And we stood up their content marketing program in healthcare. And then I kind of moved from healthcare back to publishing, helped a B2B company tell their stories better, help their journalists learn how to write for the web. I think it's not as difficult as people make it out to be, honestly. If you just kind of think about it, it's really about using the right terminology and answering people's questions. We had, I was talking to 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓻𝓷 the other day. He was on the Marketing Demystified podcast, and he talked about, just don't be so creative with your H2. Just say what it is. Don't be like vague. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of use the terms people use. And he's so right. But in journalism, sometimes we're trying to be too cute, maybe, or too creative, if that's a thing. I don't know if too creative is a thing. But, then moved into the technology sector, finished my marketing series, book series, of course, and have done software marketing for 𝓲𝓵𝓵 for about 3 years, and then moved over to 𝓬𝓬𝓪𝓻𝓷, which was founded by the former chief revenue officer at 𝓲𝓵𝓵. So that's been a great move, still in the market research space. It's kind of interesting to me because I know that space. I can write about that content. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I've been in that space for a while. So there's some value in knowing the space you're in, right? Yes, you can learn the different spaces, but there is some value. When it comes to AI, I use AI daily. I don't know if you listened to this episode, but I actually cloned my voice with 11 laps. And I published an entire podcast episode with my clone voice. It just read a book chapter. And people are listening to it, and I say it's read by my AI voice, right? I'm not saying it's not me. So you can use it for things like that. The new intro, and when we have you on my show, you'll hear it. But the intro used to be my wife for like 3 years, and now I recently re-recorded it with an AI voice. It sounds pretty good. I don't think people can even tell that it's an AI voice if I didn't tell them. And it sounds fine, right? There was a couple things on the first version. It's kind of cheesy, like she would be like, "Let's go," or something like that, super weird. And I did not like, I cut that out. I didn't want that. But for the most part, it works. The other way I use AI mostly is for headlines. And I don't always use the headlines word for word. I hardly ever do. I use 𝓵𝓵𝓵 that has been built on top of ChatGPT. And I say, this is the topic of the article, and it gives you like 10 headline ideas. And then the other one I commonly use is the outline functionality, Jeff. So, I can make my own outline, or I can start with 𝓵𝓵𝓵 and say, here's my topic, give me a draft one outline. And then sometimes I disagree with it. Sometimes I don't think one thing is its own section. It fits into another section. And then there's sometimes sections that I want to add and that 𝓵𝓵𝓵 didn't even add. But those are the main things that I use it for. I think writing with ChatGPT, first of all, I will share the story. I ran something through ChatGPT and I said, give me these 5 things, right? And I was never going to use them anywhere. And then I send out a quote request to a bunch of experts, right? Like you get those, right? Saying, hey, Jeff, can you send me a quote for whatever for this article? And one expert took my request, put it into ChatGPT, didn't tell me that, of course, and sent me back my response, which was almost word for word of what I had just done myself. So I'm like, I am not quoting you for sending me a ChatGPT answer. So I wouldn't recommend that. But I think there's a lot of ways you can use it. I think there's a lot of ways that make sense. But if you're going to use it for your writing, it might replace you as a writer, but it's not going to replace you as an editor, because you really have to edit it really, really, really well.
Yeah. That's a very interesting question. I want to quickly get onto that in a minute, but just to quickly confirm, I'm not happy. I sometimes use ChatGPT to write headlines for me, and it's got a certain way of doing headlines which I really don't like. It basically is a 2-part headline. So you say you're using 𝓵𝓵𝓵, 𝓵𝓵𝓵?
That's it. And you can, when you go in there, Jeff, you actually say, here's the topic, and then you tell it what kind of tone you want. So it could be witty, or I don't know what all the tones are, funny or something like that. So you can definitely do that. Yep.
Well, I actually asked ChatGPT to do a controversial headline. It says, sorry, we can't do that because we can't go to the naughty corner because we might upset people. And went, really? So ChatGPT is actually too well behaved for me, actually, I'm finding, in a sense. So 𝓵𝓵𝓵.ai, is it, or not?
No, 𝓵𝓵𝓵.com.
.com, okay. We'll give that a crack because, anyway, so writing and AI, I'm agonizing over this because I actually enjoy the process of writing. And
I do too.
And I came across a quote by Joseph Campbell, the guy behind the fantastic, I'm a bit of a Joseph Campbell fanboy, the guy behind The Hero's Journey that's inspired dozens and dozens of movies, and including Star Wars. And in fact, the top 8 to 10 movies of all time are written with his story arc, The Hero's Journey. He said that he has a love affair with the actual art of writing and researching, because he wants to find out where the source was, then he wants to think about it, then he wants to write it down. And the challenge with AI and ChatGPT especially is that you can just put in a question and it can write it all for you, including the intro, the outro, and the content in between. But it just leaves me cold. And I'm going, if this is writing today, then I'm having an existential crisis. So I'm really trying to work out, how do we use it as a tool instead of a crutch? And I'd be interested in your thoughts around that, because information is one thing, writing is another.
It is, and I actually like the way you put that. As a tool as opposed to a crutch. I'll probably quote you on that a few times this week. But it's interesting. I think you use it as a tool, kind of the way I use it, right? Like, you're trying to make your content better. And if you think about it, I use Grammarly, right? Grammarly is an AI-based tool, right? And sometimes Grammarly's recommendations of what I should change are horrible. And it didn't get what I actually was trying to say, or maybe whatever. But it's so it's not always foolproof, but that's how I use those tools, right? With the headlines, with the outline, with, even, sometimes I combine headlines. The other thing I wanted to mention is, this is a crutch. So I'll give you an example. You can do all kinds of things with AI, and I've done this before. I can actually clone myself, not just my voice, but I can, have myself cloned. And then you send me the questions, and then I do the answers written, and I literally just have my clone talk to you. But what's the point? We're not going to have a conversation about you being in Sydney, I'm being in Marion, or where we've met and how awesome it was, and, interesting food, very, very hard, honestly, for an American like me not to have hamburger for 10 days or 8 days or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going to have these unique connections. We're just going to, we're going to be like robots, right? And whether that's podcasting or whether it's writing, what AI cannot do is it cannot actually bring that personality into things, but it can help you. I'll give you one more example. 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓻𝓷 and I did a webinar, and he said, oh, my book, whatever his book is called, Content Chemistry, I think, or something like that. And he said, somebody said, this book has everything you need to know in content. And he goes, how do they know? How do they know? Like, how would they know? They're humans. So he goes, but I appreciate the comments. So I took my book and I uploaded it to ChatGPT PDF or something like that. And I said, this book is about content. What is it missing? And ChatGPT spit out, you're missing these 4 things. And he said, well, 3 of those things I don't really care about. And the final thing, okay, maybe. So you can use it to fill in those blanks, right? To really kind of brainstorm. I think that's how I like to use it. But if you're reading some of the crap it spits out, it's going to be really hard for anybody to drive results with that content.
Yep. Yeah. It's a fascinating, and I'm actually in the middle of writing an article on how to be a human and write using ChatGPT. And I'm trying to, because people like steps and processes. So I'm in the middle of doing that, and it's fascinating because it's something I've really been wrestling with, because being human and writing is generally about writing stories, and as journalists write stories. So ChatGPT can write stories, but they're fake generally. Whereas we write stories that are human, that involve pain and joy and everything in between. So it's really fascinating. And anyway, I'm having some fun writing that. So I'm just going to go out and date night with AI and get to know them really well, so I can actually write well using ChatGPT. But it's really, really fascinating. Well, I find it fascinating. And I'm sure, I talked over with my editor recently and mentioned what I was doing and what I was writing. She said, I'm feeling exactly the same thing. And I reckon millions of writers all around the world are feeling the same thing. So anyway, I'm having a crack at how to hang out with AI and ChatGPT as a writer that uses it as a tool instead of a crutch.
The other thing is, and I have not had any luck with this, but Christopher Penn uses, he creates images with AI. And so that's another thing. And then the final thing, there's real dangers. You may have heard about this case. There was a lawyer in the United States who had an opinion being written by AI. And then the opposing counsel said, we're trying to look up these cases. We can't find them. Yeah. Can you tell us which court they're in? And it was all made up, right? So that's not even a crutch. That's just like hiring a bad writer who's going to get you into trouble. So, don't use it as a crutch, use it as a tool, but certainly there are opportunities to use it.
Yeah. You're right. It's just at the start of this revolution, and I'm calling that instead of an evolution because it is. It's taken the world by storm, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it continues to develop into, because there's no destination here. It's just a journey that is fun to be in and part of. I'm enjoying the adventure along with a lot of.
I do too. And the other thing to think about too with ChatGPT, especially, it's 2 years behind, right? It's not live.
That's right.
And the other day, I said, hey, tell me about content marketer Christoph Trappe. And it did. And it was all correct. But then it says, as of whatever 2021, which is when our cutoff date was, but imagine content marketing evolves really quickly. So that's 2 years. Like, that's a long time in many fields.
Yep. Exactly. So Google's saying it's actually scraping the web with its tool Bard now. So we might find it becomes more up to date as competitors continue to move into the space. So we've got limited time here because I'm going to leap on and do a live stream / podcast with you in the next few minutes. So we've seen the movement of content marketing from blogging, social media came along, mobile phones came along, then we had images with Instagram come along. Then we've had videos turn up in Instagram and Facebook. Today now we've got AI. So we've got this whole transition from the core writing just on blogs. We blogged, we did social media, we mobiled, smartphones, and then we moved into doing short videos. So, quick question. How do you see the role of short videos such as YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels? How do you see that content marketing today?
Yeah, I think they're a fantastic tool. I'll give you an example. So you're going to come on the business storytelling show, and we're doing a live stream, and the live stream is also on YouTube. And then of course the replay is on YouTube. And one way I'm driving my subscribers on YouTube is by constantly doing YouTube Shorts, right? So we do fun little videos. Sometimes it's my daughter and I, and it's just like a trending sound, right? And or like my patio, which has nothing to do with storytelling, but I did a video of that, 50,000 views, right? Most of our videos have anywhere from, I mean, there's some that don't have very many, but there's many that have 1,000 to 10,000 views. So what happens, Jeff, some of those people subscribe, right? And the more people subscribe, the better it is for the algorithm, or the better it is for your YouTube presence. And the more people watch it and whatnot. So I think there's a place for those videos. I think the trick is to make them interesting. I think the trick is to tie them in with your brand. Everything we do, I tie back to podcasting somehow. Sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it does work, right? So I think that works. What we don't want people to do, in my opinion, is just to do boring videos, just like you used to do a boring video that was longer, and now you do a boring video that's shorter. So make it engaging, answer questions that your audience has, make it fun. I mean, people do it all the time, right? They just show stuff on the screen and it works. So, and then sometimes short doesn't mean just a few seconds. I'll give you another example. I've been taking the first 5 minutes of my podcast episodes and upload them to my TikTok channel. And they're performing really well, especially when you compare them to the other videos on my TikTok channel. I'm sorry, not the first 5 minutes, the first 9.5 minutes. You can do 10 minutes on TikTok, and you can do, I think, 5 minutes on Threads, which I've done one time, but I can't tell you if my videos on Threads are working or not because there's no metrics. So yeah, just try them, see what works, see what doesn't work. And so I think all those things work together. But the one thing you asked me, what has changed? Some of those things have changed, but what hasn't changed is that blog posts still work. They still drive SEO when you do them well. So some of those tried and true and old strategies, they're still worthwhile doing even today.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, because I was an accidental SEO expert over the years. I created just a ton of content. And today I have quite a few posts that are generating 20,000 plus clicks a month for free. Mm-hmm. And that's people actually reading rather than just entertaining themselves. So, yeah, creating content that generates long-term authority via Google and search. Guys, don't forget about it, because it's really important, and it's a gift that keeps giving, and it's free, except for the time to create it, by the way. So Chris, any quick thoughts before we wrap? Because we're going to leap and launch over into your side of the fence.
Really appreciate you making the time. Good to see you again. And it's always great to talk about it and sometimes be a guest on a show. You know, you get so hung up in hosting your own show. So always appreciate you having me on yours.
Thanks, Christoph. It's been an absolute pleasure.